record unless specified not to record. So I always ask to make sure.
Data management strategies.
All right, you should be good to go whenever you're ready.
Thank you.
Bio.
Oh, thank you.
And now I can just again. Yeah, give it another 3 or 4 minutes. Sure, everybody's racing over here.
Right.
Interesting.
Or they lied to me, so they were coming. And actually hopped on a plane.
Huh?
And hopped on a plane.
Yeah, I know. I've heard a couple people already doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've learned how much afternoon of day 1, day 2, first day of presentation. That's your ideal spot.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of weird we ended up this day.
Oh,
I guess everybody has to at some point, right?
no.
Take year longs.
Thank you.
I was actually thinking more about, you know, Dietrich was wanting to talk more about those connecting straight to the mobile app, but I really like that Ignite component.
We don't have cloud to cloud. I didn't put that slide up there. We don't have cloud to cloud integration right now.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if you can pull it down, you can
Mhm.
automate it to say, all right, it went down into this folder, and I want to automate it to push it into my X drive or my Z drive or whatever it is. So there's ways to get around that. That's why I wanted you guys to kind of look at that cloud piece to see. And I don't know, right? All I know is that for 10 years now or 5 years now, every single software company said, well, if it can't continuously connect via Wi-Fi to the camera, then I don't want to do it. I'm like,
Right.
well, we'll get there.
Yeah.
And now that we're there, the industry is like, well, we found other ways to skin the cat.
Right.
Yeah.
And what we do, what we want to capture with it. So.
Yeah.
Maybe I should sit.
Yeah, I know.
Makes up.
Just standing up for 3 straight days.
Tried in 3 inch heels. I challenge you.
Stop complaining.
I have to tell you a story about this. Yeah.
Negative. Takes
Oh, what did you do?
industrial distribution. Yeah. Said, yeah, it's just the scoring.
And that's cool.
Expensive. Yeah. It's pretty, like everything is the core. They're all supposed to have it all. Like the shield.
That's cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So next up, we have Carrie Ward with Trihydro, and she's going to talk a little bit about that, right? I can't see it, so I'm going to let you guys read it. But Ms. Ward has 22 years of experience in environmental compliance projects and environmental development software development and deployment. Her background lends a deep understanding of purposeful data and the importance of involving industry experts in the evolution of software tools. Ms. Ward has worked closely with stakeholders and regulatory agencies to align goals with achievable closure targets, which formed a greater appreciation for the accurate representation of existing conditions and the ability to recall historical compliance-related data. Her career passion is in helping industry leaders make better, cost-effective decisions by introducing tools that create visibility and opportunity for program optimization. She worked closely with customers and FLIR to understand data management goals, identify solutions, and incorporate feedback into product enhancements. Carrie, thank you for being here, and look forward to your talk.
Yeah, thank you. I almost thought he was about to say that I was 22 years old. And I'm like, yeah, we'll go with that. We'll go with that. So I'm going to talk about some data management topics for operators to consider as folks are
And I kind of do like being on Thursday because now they've all had the chance to look at some of the great technologies out there and are starting to evaluate what might work for your program. And so I'm going to share some feedback with some of our customers who have started to explore that and gave us some things to consider as we're talking about processing that information and integrating it with other systems. And then I'm also going to talk a little bit about Quad OC because we have seen a lot of operators that are complying with state specific requirements and or federal implementation plans. So that kind of can give us some perspective on what it's going to look like when Quad OC drops. But I have to state my disclaimer in my lack of proficiency in regulatory knowledge, because at Tri-Hydro, we rely heavily on our subject matter experts like Dan Wood and Brian Palmer, who are here today. You might have had the chance to listen to them talk, and they're the ones that are helping us keep our technology focused on the regulations and up to date with those regulations, but also they're using the tool just like a lot of our customers that are operators and or other contractors that are doing the OGI work. And so that entire network is informing us on, you know, what to expect with Quad OB and C when they drop. So the topics I'm going to present right now is the culmination of some feedback that we have seen so far, and hopefully you find it useful. But regardless of what system you use, so a lot of the instances I'm going to represent here are related to Leak Tracker Pro. So that's Tri-Hydro's proprietary software. But regardless of whatever system that you have, these are going to be great topics to consider and challenge your current operations with these questions. So start off with those questions. As you're considering some of those new survey technologies, we want to take into account these major topics or these major questions. So obviously starting off with, what is your objective? Thinking about that both short-term and long-term. Will your technology provider, so if you end up picking an alternative technology, will that one capture all of the required information that we're seeing right now in the rule? And then how will that data from them be provided to you? How will you manage your monitoring frequency based on that selection and the combination of all your other survey methods? Do you still have to conduct optical gas imaging, or OGI? We all know what that term is by now at this point, or AVOs. Does your alternative technology integrate with the workflow of your record keeping and reporting system? And then finally, will your plan for Quad OB provide you with a path to scale up to Quad OC? So starting off with, what's your objective? Determining your objective will define your data management needs as you develop a plan for incorporating alternative methodologies. So many of the new survey methods have been around for a while, but with Quad OB, the EPA is modernizing regulations by incorporating these advanced technologies. So over the last 5 years, we've seen operators set up voluntary programs using this technology, and then they're coming to us to ask us, can we integrate this system? Because now that data will be available to use and demonstrate compliance. So going back to your objective, will they be a part of a voluntary program like some of them are doing right now? Do you plan, or is it in your intention to replace OGI and reduce your site visits to your facilities? Are you using them to help identify neighboring factors and the contributions that may or may not be presenting to your facilities? And then lastly, most operators are looking to demonstrate environmental responsibility to shareholders that may even go beyond what is required right now or what will be required. So determining your objective now, even if it's one or more of these and changes over time, you're going to want a good plan in place to manage your data. So operators challenged us to broaden Leak Tracker Pro's original focus that was just on Quad OA. And they challenged us to broaden it to incorporate the rest of their LDAR programs and some of their other applicabilities. So we expanded it, and this has kind of been an evolutionary process, to include additional rules, rule sets, and inspection types that are coming from those state-specific rules. So for example, in my screenshot here, this is an example of a potential company who is operating in several different regions across the country. And they have Colorado Reg 7 applied to their Colorado assets. They also are looking at GHG Subpart W. And right now they've set up two separate voluntary monitoring programs, one using the OGI method, and they're doing that for trying to kind of get an idea of what their existing facilities look like, but having that tracked as a voluntary program. And then that second one's supposed to say AVO, but their second one will be an AVO, maybe monthly or weekly monitoring. I can't see what we put on there, to incorporate that AVO survey type in some of their regions. And so then finally, we also have this example following not North Dakota, New Mexico, the precursor rule, and conducting AVOs for the facilities that they have in New Mexico. So again, an example of what they're looking for, or what a lot of different companies that are using Leak Tracker Pro right now look like for their entire rule set. And then we're capturing in this example two different survey types that have been applied to those rule sets. And moving forward, as the new technologies get accepted by the EPA or incorporated into the policy, we're going to look at adding those as additional survey types so we can track that data as well. So we'll look at that here in a little bit in more detail. So once you've decided on your objective, with incorporating alternative survey methods, you'll want to make sure that your provider is capturing the required information. And so things like the approved monitoring plan that you get established, manufacturer's information, maintenance plans, those are all a given and you're going to need that information. But what about the survey details like regulated facility ID, potential quantifications and calculations like rolling average concentration that could be calculated from continuous monitoring. So a lot of different data sets that are going to be coming in from those alternative technologies, and just making sure that you are aware of those different data sources, what the data formats are looking like. And then equally important is how you're going to integrate that data with your record keeping system that you already have in place that's tracking your emissions with your surveys, your leaks, and generating reports for you. So next, how will you manage your monitoring frequency? So based on the technology that you go with, your frequency will be determined based on the minimum detection threshold of that alternative method. So tables 1 and 2 from Quad OB will drive your monitoring frequency based on what technologies you're implementing where. You'll want to make sure that you're tracking your reporting and tracking system is able to manage the frequencies for all survey types in addition to the new technology, so that you have reminders in place to keep you on schedule and keep all those balls in the air for the different survey types that you might be subjected to across your company. In Leak Tracker Pro, the regulations created with the survey types are going to be what drive your survey schedule and letting your surveyors know what they have to complete. So on this screen, this is our dashboard from Leak Tracker Pro, the website, and we have facilities in the first column, and then you have the facilities organized into regions, and so that's user defined, so you can pick if that's your route, your play that you're operating in, or the state that your facilities are in, and you can group those. And then the next column over is showing your regulations that have been applied to the facility. So the screen I showed you a moment ago, defining your rule sets across the board. And then once you have and then all the other columns off to the right. So when your next OGI survey is due, when your next AVO is due, and what unrepaired leaks or DORs that you have tied to that facility. That is, I call this our command center. So it tells you what's happening when and what's driving that frequency. So depending on your selected alternative technology, you may still have to conduct OGI surveys at least once a year. You're going to need a way to track and collect those inspections along with your other survey data. And then you might also, more than likely, need the ability to assess a leak that has been identified by your flyover or your alternative method technology. So, for example, when a flyover technology or flyover survey has been done, it's going to take about 1 to 2 weeks to get that data back. But then once you do, you might need to deploy an operator out there to assess that record or leak. And then while you're out there, you also don't want to forget what routine surveys might also be applied to that facility. So you'll need the opportunity to capture the required OGI survey information or AVO survey information that are applied to that facility while they're there. So looking at trying to accomplish or kill more birds with one stone while they're out there. So my slide has screenshots to show you how that's actually done in our system. This is from our mobile app. The mobile app slide on the left shows the Allegheny facility that is regulated by both Quad OA and a voluntary AVO program, has the option to select the survey type that they are intending to perform while they're at that Allegheny facility. So they can do OGI while they're there, and they can also capture that AVO just so that they can document that record in both of those categories. And then the slide on the right is showing how if they're deployed to assess a leak that's been identified by your alternative technologies, so your flyover data, this is where they'll go out and they'll go ahead and record that leak, but identify it, the survey reason, as a non-routine. And then that way it'll be like an ad hoc survey that their survey record that they're adding to the system to capture that official leak record. And it's not going to impact your routine survey cycle, but just still go ahead and capture that information according to the rule. Okay, does your alternative technology integrate with your record keeping and reporting system? So one of the best things about new technology is that they typically facilitate connectivity. And so Craig over here was talking about some of those different ways of connecting. And so, definitely look into that, because things like an API, which is application programming interface, that's the newest technology. It's basically a conduit of information between your two different systems. You can schedule when you want that to happen and what type of information you want to pull or push from those systems. Those are really handy. And then we also saw cloud connectivity, Bluetooth, and Wi-Fi are also really common. So you'll want to find out if and how easily these technologies can transfer information, and also which systems you want them to communicate with. So right now, like I said, flyover data, it takes about 1 to 2 weeks to process, and then you're going to receive that information in a couple different file formats. And so we have 2 different customers that have already come to us and asked us, let's talk about how we're going to integrate this data with your system. But they had 2 different ideas about how we could go about that. So the first one wants to get that data from their flyover solution and store it in their own internal system, and then go through it and understand and assess the leak data that's come to them. And then they want Leak Tracker Pro to receive officially identified leaks from that data. So they want to determine it in their own system if it's a Quad OA defined leak, and then push that record into Leak Tracker Pro. Whereas the other folks that are processing flyover data want to just upload a spreadsheet, and then they want a feature in our system that says, no, this is related to a Title V. I mean, maybe not that detail oriented, but no, this is not applicable. We need to go and check this one out. Or, yep, this is a legit leak, and now we want that official leak record created. And so maybe that middle one is then going to deploy your OGI operator out into the field to then go assess that leak with the OGI camera. Both of these situations or both of these ideas make sense to us. Both operators ultimately want the ability to store the records, the survey records from their flyover data or from their alternative solution as official survey records. And so they want that data to come into the system so then they could get the reporting features to produce their regulatory reports with that data. And so one of those folks are also looking for a way to maximize the connectivity capabilities also with their work order system. So now I'm going to use our visual aid here to explain how that maximum potential or maximum efficiency data flow could work for you. You have your data coming in from your alternative technology, maybe with an API connectivity going into your record keeping system. And then as soon as an official leak record has been created, you want that leak to issue a work ticket in your work order system like Maximo. And then leak order ticket gets sent out to your maintenance crew. Your maintenance crew repairs that, documents that record in their work order system, checks that box internally. But then Leak Tracker Pro will grab that repair record and then save that into our system and trigger the next step, which is the confirmation. And so, you know, making sure those are all working together so that all of the data is stored in one system. If you need notifications to track that cycle to make sure and validate that it's all happening automatically like you set it up for, then the point is that you can eventually use all that data and the reporting features in your record keeping system to generate the compliance report with a click of a button. I think on that last slide, I might have one last point. Yeah, so just keep in mind all the different data sources that you have with your work order system and challenge your data system providers to make them talk to each other, because those technologies have that capability today. All right, lastly, will your plan for Quad OOOOb, so whichever alternative survey methods you end up going with, will that provide you with a path to scale up to Quad OOOOc? So many operators, like I mentioned before, are conducting voluntary programs right now to understand fugitive emissions at their existing or legacy facilities so that they know what to expect when Quad OOOOc is implemented. Although part of the reason why we know they're tracking them in our system is because some of those legacy assets that they've purchased come with some type of monitoring agreement that's been decided between them, or some of them have already been subjected to a consent decree. And so that's part of the reason why they're monitoring them. But nevertheless, making sure that we're incorporating that data into the system or looking into the future, you can go ahead and start doing that now if you wanted to know and track that data as a voluntary program. But hopefully with those, other conditions that might be driving some type of enforcement with existing facilities right now, hopefully Quad OOOOc is going to supersede those unique instances so that you're not doubling up. So think about that too. I know a couple of folks that are thinking, wow, this is just going to make us double up on all of our data records. How can we manage that? But I would also kind of challenge that thought once that new regulation comes into play. And then hopefully once they come into play, then they're going to also incorporate, the state plans and the tribal plans are going to hopefully incorporate those alternative survey methods as well. But until they do, we're tracking several state-specific monitoring requirements, as well as FIPS, so federal implementation plans. And then we also are tracking a few additional federal plans like FEMSA through, I think, USDOT. Maybe not. But that's for the pipeline segments that are tracking their own future. Okay. And then GHG subpart W, and then that last one's probably supposed to say non-permit, the non-permit rule standard. Yes, for TCEQ. So we are tracking that. Yep, that's a typo. Down in Texas as well for some of our customers that are operating down there. Okay, so now transitioning to Quad-C more specifically, these are the 3 topics that we feel right now are important to consider. So just want to make sure that you guys are thinking about these things and what your existing facility program might look like if it comes into play. So 1, let's consider what adding existing facilities will look like for your workflow. Managing facilities that become subjected to multiple regulations, and then make sure with those additional regulations beyond Quad-C, Quad-B, Quad-O, whatever alphabet soup, that they're also capturing the nuances that come into play from each of those different regulations. Okay, so first off, how will adding additional facilities affect your workflow? For some folks that we've already talked to, adding existing facilities to their workflow and their network will increase their OGI monitoring program by orders of magnitude. So qualifying that kind of impact right now for what your existing facilities look like that might become subject to the rule will help you decide if and where to implement alternative technologies. We started to explore what this will look like with some of our customers, like I said already, who are already incorporating existing facilities as a voluntary program, and evaluated and adjusted our own pricing structure to account for those smaller wellhead or meter stations because they're producing less data points. And so therefore they aren't going to cost as much to keep track of those records within our software program. So the main take home here is as you get your arms around what adding existing facilities will look like for you, make sure you're considering how it's going to impact each line item of your budget. So how will it impact your current workload? Do you need to add additional staff, or do you need to consider additional contractors, especially when Appendix K kicks in and starts requiring everything that's requiring? Take into consideration your software costs and how adding those existing facilities are going to inflate just pretty much every aspect of your budget, or could, and then looking for efficiencies so that you can reduce that impact a little bit more. And so try and get your arms around what that will look like right now, and then also see if you can fit adding those additional survey technologies into your workflow. Okay, managing facilities subjected to multiple regulations. So we talked about this a little bit, and I showed you on our screen how we can track multiple regulations. But I showed you that from our dashboard. I wanted you to have kind of a little look at what that looks like for the surveyor who's using the mobile app in the field. And so let's see, it really helps if you're tracking that information like I showed you in Leak Tracker Pro by facility. So you're adding your regulations in, and you're adding the survey types to those regulations, and then you're applying all of that at the facility level. So the screenshot that you can see here off to the left is an example. Let's say facility B is subjected to both Quad-O and Colorado Reg 7. Who is subjected to Colorado Reg 7 here? I thought there was somebody here from CDPHE. Okay, so I keep using this example and you're not familiar with it. So if you ever want to know a little bit more about that regulation, let me know. It's quite cumbersome, but interesting, and you need the ability to be able to capture those nuances between those two regulations if you have a facility that is subject to both of them. And so here I'm showing that because facility B is also a Quad-O facility, in addition to Colorado Reg 7, our system is going to go with the most conservative set of rules that are applied to that facility, and then pull what they need to capture in their survey into that form. So it's reactive based on what that facility is subjected to. And so here you can see that it's also requiring that they're capturing the monitoring equipment calibration record. And that's only happening with the first inspection that's performed each day with your camera. But if this was just a Colorado Reg 7, it's not going to require that. So that part of that stage of the survey is not going to be on their screen. It'll adapt to it. You can see on the right, this Campbell facility only has AVOs associated with the New Mexico rule. And so that form logic is much more simplified. It's just, yep, we're documenting that this is an AVO record, start, stop, here's our location. But with each of those, you can see probably faded back if you have better eyes than me, the other leak and repair stages. So if you're out there performing your survey, you're still gonna have the ability to record both your leaks, your repairs, and the confirmations all in the app. One thing I wanted to note here too was some of the folks that do have facilities that are subjected to more than one rule don't operate in a way that they are always collecting the most conservative set of information. And so what we're looking at is adding the ability for surveyors to identify or choose which regulation they want to collect a survey for. So then that record is tracked according to that regulation only and not counting for also Colorado Reg 7. And then that way, when they run their report through our tool, it won't pull in additional information since it's capturing both for that survey. We're a little nervous about what that might look like, but want to make sure, only because that would put the onus of, deciding which compliance point they want or they need to perform on the surveyor themselves, but that might actually make sense in some cases where you have your environmental managers that are ones that are running that OGI camera for their program. So options available, always looking for feedback on some of those ideas before we actually implement that feature. Okay, so the last topic that I want to address where Quad OOOC is concerned is making sure that you are capturing the required data for each regulation. So those additional nuances that might be showing up in specific regulations. We've seen some nuances applied to Colorado Reg 7, but we've also seen some folks that are right now operating under consent decrees or also including FEMSA into their fugitive mission program. There's little nuances with each of those regulations. And so when it makes sense, we've added those questions to our form logic so that they can capture it there in the field. And so in the side that you see, I'm showing, well, this one's Quad OA, but this is a Quad OA compressor. And so when the app knows that they are at a facility that is identified as a compressor and regulated by Quad OA, they have to also indicate whether or not which compressors are operating at the time of their survey. And so that's why that is an additional nuance to those conditions of a facility and the applicability of that regulation. And then the one on the right is showing where we have taken FEMSA into account. And so here, if when conducting the survey, you encounter a leak, then we added these additional components of, well, questions for the surveyor to identify with that leak, what is the leak grade, the failure cause, the material, and the age of the pipeline segment or the component that is leaking. Oops. Not quite there, but almost. Make sure I captured all of that information on that slide. Oh yeah, okay, so of course, the main reason why we are incorporating those nuances to the data collection side is because those are also components that need to be reported and included in the compliance report. And so when we're capturing it here in the mobile app, then we can put it in your report. So, again, this is Leak Tracker Pro, but making sure that your current system that you're using, if it's not Leak Tracker Pro, is capturing those nuances and taking that information then into consideration when it's building out your compliance reports. That way, your operators or your environmental managers can generate those reports from multiple regulations with a click of a button. So that's the goal we'd like you to challenge your record keeping systems with. So key takeaways, that's about it. I'll have some spots for some questions, hopefully at the end, but these are my key takeaways. So determine your objective. If you're considering alternative technology, what are you going to look to accomplish, and making sure you get your arms around that system or those objectives first, and then determine what changes you need to make with respect to your data record keeping systems. Make sure that there is a path to scale up to Quad OC when you have to start monitoring your existing facilities, and if they are applicable. And then the last one is taking advantage of the integration capabilities of all of your systems that are tied to your fugitive emission programs. Challenge them to see how and if they can integrate with each other to streamline your systems. And again, just looking for ways to make your program more efficient as the complexity gets adopted by the rules. So that's it. Do you guys have any questions? Yes, Heather.
Maybe you two can discuss this, it sounded like you were both thinking, but I'm curious what their photos or videos from their camera into Lake Tracker Pro. I don't actually have, we don't have one of those clear lab or tablets. I don't know, is that, can you use Lake Tracker Pro for that, or having to leave the field, can you see those into your app and
those are fantastic questions, because right now what you're doing is for a photo of a leak, you can capture that leak photo with your device that's using the application, right? But if you, for your site photograph, if you don't have any leaks and you still need to demonstrate that you were physically there with the OOOOc camera, you need to take your picture with your OOOOc camera. And so I'm guessing that is specifically the photo that you're looking to integrate with the two systems. And so right now we're documenting the file name for that image that's captured in your camera or on the device that's uploading into your computer where you're normally getting that data into the system, and then you're attaching it when you're in the website. But we have been talking with FLIR a lot about taking advantage of those integration capabilities, and we want to make sure that when we do adapt and we do make that connectivity, that it's operating with FLIR, but also some of the other cameras, because not everybody has a FLIR camera, and also some people want that ability to integrate with other systems. No offense there, but I mean, we don't want to limit ourselves, and we want to make sure that that technology is smooth and connected. And so, like I said, we are working with them to figure out what that's going to look like, but it's not quite there yet.
You also mentioned connection with all the other systems, and one of them was integration with calculations and measurements. Was that outside calculations and measurements, or do you have measurements that you can put into the system, like i.e. high flow data or FLIR camera data or other measurement data?
That is a fantastic question. And so the reason why I mentioned that is because I know a little bit about the continuous monitoring data that folks are collecting right now for the refineries, and also the fence line concept of tracking that and calculating that rolling average, because we have other technology that actually, that actually captures that and runs that calculation for them. So right now, Leak Tracker Pro doesn't do that, but that's the one thing that we want to talk with folks, like what type of technologies are you looking into? What additional data do you need tied to your fugitive emission data? And then what is going to be driving those regulatory reports? And so, like I said, we're exploring that right now with the customers that are looking at it, but we have ways to store complementary data with a leak. So you can upload any type of file format right now so that it's stored with your leak record. You can even upload the entire FLIR image during the inspection and track that with either the survey or just the leak. And you can do multiple file formats to keep that tracked right there in the website. So there's a place to store it, but right now we aren't like doing that automated calculation. Yeah, not yet. Good question, though. Anybody else?
Carrie, thank you very much.
Thank
Give
you.
her a round of applause. Those of you interested, who we have next here? It looks like Alliance Technical Group talking about OGI for their Skybridge software. I'm a bad moderator. I just realized I forgot to pass these things out. People to sign in.
Oh, oops. Oh, that's okay. I think Dan might have passed on.
Oops. I'll get it from Mike Ogden next. Good job, Carrie.